So thank you so much to everyone for joining. This webinar is being hosted by Pierce Washington, Logic.io, and we have a very special guest from Oldcastle. Our webinar today is around how to streamline the customer journey and capture more revenue for manufacturers. We will have this session recorded. We will also be sending this recording out to all of our registrations following the webinar today. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to ask questions throughout the presentation. We will reserve some time for Q&A at the end of our more panel discussion, as well as some last-minute questions at the end. So JL, if you want to jump back one slide, I'll do some introductions. So thank you again to everyone for joining the webinar hosted by Logic.io in Pierce, Washington. This webinar will be recorded and sent out to everyone. I'm Courtney Shaw. I am the head of marketing for Pierce, Washington. We have a great set of speakers for you today. First up, we have Russ Halverson. He is VP of Product for Logic.io. We've worked really closely over the last couple of years. Next up, we have John Lerkind, Director of Innovation for Pierce, Washington. And then lastly, we have a special guest, Megan Bozen, from VP of Business Performance from Oldcastle. She's been with Oldcastle for just coming on 3 years now, and worked really closely with both PW and Logic during our implementations together. So we'll toss it back over to the housekeeping slide just one more time. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen if you have any questions. We will try and answer them live during the panel discussion. If we run out of time for that, we will hopefully save a couple minutes at the end for some last-minute questions. We'll also share with this group some contact information if you have any questions following the webinar. And with that, I will turn it over to Russ.
Awesome. Thank you, Courtney. So we're going to kick it off just talking a little bit about, some of the trends that we're seeing just generally overall in the market, and then probably double click a little bit into, specifically what we're seeing with manufacturing customers. So you can go to the next slide, John. At Logic, there's really kind of 3 key pillars that we're starting to see really across all verticals. And one of the bigger ones is really this desire for customers to have what we call perfect fit solutions. And so the way to think about this is, rather than going to a website and trying to navigate through product categories and faceted search, you really try to understand, the customer problem and the business use case, and then fit your configuration needs or your product discovery needs to find the customer exactly what they're looking for. Again, just a perfect fit solution. As part of that, a lot of customers are starting to do a lot of research on their own ahead of time. So before they even get to talking to a sales rep or engaging with a company, they're probably going to jump online. They're probably going to do some search. They might ask ChatGPT. But as part of that product discovery, they're looking for expert guided assistance. And so the best way to think about that is just, again, on that customer journey of trying to find the right product. What are the questions you're asking to engage that customer? I recently bought, I tell this story, a lawnmower a couple of years ago to mow my lawn. I wish somebody asked me how big my lawn was because I probably would have bought a bigger mower. So having that expert guided assistance, having somebody there to provide that information, because again, customers they're starting to look for this before they even engage with your company and with your sales teams. And then finally, really over the last, since really the pandemic, this has been a challenge and a problem that companies have been trying to solve for a while. But over the last 3-4 years, really being able to engage at any channel at any time. A lot of our customers and prospects right now, they have a direct sales channel, they have a partner channel, but e-commerce, being able to sell when you're engaging through, customer support, self-service, e-commerce, and using the same system to do that is becoming more and more important. So we go to the next slide, John. I think, if we take a look at the manufacturing space in particular, that's kind of the high level, but manufacturing kind of presents its own set of opportunities for configuration. One of those is just the products themselves. They tend to be overly complex. Even with the best product discovery tools and guided expert assistance, these tend to be really big projects, and we'll hear about Oldcastle in a minute, another one of those companies. And so being able to provide a solution to meet those expansive, complex product portfolios is really, really important in the manufacturing space. These quoting processes tend to be fairly complex, and it's just not the complexity of the products, it's also the complexity of like how you engage with the customer. Typically requirements gathering, they don't happen in one pass. There's a lot of iterations. There's inventory, there's where are we going to manufacture it? Where do we source the materials? Tends to be a very long, drawn out process. And so being able to organize all those different tools, the business process into one place is super important for solving for manufacturing. And then finally, just, on the last bullet here, BOM generation, one of the big things that we see in a lot of, existing systems is that the sales bill of material, what you want to present and talk to with the customer, and all of the things that you need to have from a manufacturing perspective, whether that's, the manufacturing bill of material, the routings, inventory, et cetera, that need to go into actually manufacturing what you're selling. They tend to be kind of clumped together, and that's where you start to create performance and scale issues inside of most tools. And so being able to kind of abstract away the complexity and really focus on like what you're selling, but enable your organization to, configure and sell products and ultimately manufacture them is super important. So that's kind of what we're seeing at a market level. These are just some of the obvious things that we see from a manufacturing perspective. If you go to the next slide, John, we're going to spend some time with our kind of guest of honor here, Megan. So really excited you're on the call. Megan's done a really great job for us at Dreamforce and webinars talking about the Oldcastle story. Been a customer for a while here now. Just want to ask you, Megan, can you just kind of take us back to like the pre-Logic days? What led you to the product itself, or some of the challenges the organization was going through, and ultimately kind of what you're looking to solve with a tool like Logic?
Yeah, and I'll preface it by saying I've been in manufacturing for 19 years now, so I'm almost able to say 2 decades. And so one of the things is that during that time, there's been a disruption in the manufacturing process, right? And what our customers expect. So it was no different, and it's no different for us at Oldcastle. What we were faced with and have been faced with is a scenario in which, like you mentioned already, we want to put the customer at the center, and we want to understand those customer needs, and we want to be responsive. But the biggest challenge was we've grown by acquisitions, right? We've got different products. Some are make to order, some engineered to order. They're complex configurations, as you mentioned. You've got bills of materials all over the place. And we needed something to be able to unify the technology, the people, and the process in order to meet customer needs and then deliver solutions. Because the other thing that underpinned this for us is as we grow and develop, right, it wasn't about, and it's not about just simple products, but it's solutions that we're delivering to customers. And if we couldn't find a way in order to enable our teams to work within information that's readily available, then we knew we weren't going to be able to go to the next evolution in the growth of the business. So it really boiled down to, how do we meet customer needs? How do we create a workforce and a sales force that has the right information at the right time, and they're able to be agile and simplify our technology stack based upon the appropriate processes?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So it sounds like that perfect fit solution that I was mentioning earlier is something that is obviously fairly important to the Oldcastle team. I guess, John, you guys have been doing great work for us across all our customers. Let me kick it over to you. What are your thoughts on the Oldcastle story here?
Yeah, sorry. It's been tremendous to see the kind of digital transformation that Oldcastle has gone through, and to really think about the multiple systems that Oldcastle had originally before Logic. I think it was up to 13 different configurators at one point, and to really look at how Oldcastle can start to consolidate those into a single kind of revenue engine across these different channels and go-to-market strategies. So, I think it's been great to see that kind of overall journey that Oldcastle has gone through. And Megan, you've been leading kind of the charge there. But I know it also hasn't necessarily been a fully straight line, right? There's been a lot of learning lessons and a lot of adaptations to that overall goal and vision. Over the course of that journey for you, Megan, how has that evolved? And maybe can you touch on some of like the business or technical challenges or hurdles that you overcame, and maybe why maybe a pivot or a change to that strategy was sufficient for you guys?
Yeah, look, John, you hit the first part of it on the head, right? Is that our foundation included multiple applications supported by multiple processes, driven by people with different levels of expertise. So some of the reasons that some of those technologies were in place was because maybe in some places you had folks that had a deep level of expertise, so they required or thought they required less interaction from the technology all the way to the other spectrum of that. So in the partnership with, Logic and P&W, one of the things, there have been several learning lessons, right? One of those being, how do we ensure that we're creating a scalable solution? And so like anything else, right, when you start something this massive, you start with a pilot, right? And so you pick some part of the business, and we picked a part of the business that is representative of the whole in the best case that we had. In that particular location or that area of the business, we had many of these technologies that were there. And our initial thoughts around how easy, and we didn't think it would be easy, so that's probably an understatement there, but the level of complexity of the configurations between what's happening in manufacturing, between the bill of materials and what we would need to configure, it was even higher than we anticipated. And so, some of the evolution and adaptation has been us making decisions around how we think about value, how we think about pricing, how we think about training, how we think about the right skill sets and behaviors of the folks that are in our sales organizations to ensure that what we're developing is something that's easy on the uptake. The market, wants quicker, faster, better quoting, for example. And one of the other things that comes up is, based upon what that customer may be requesting, it may be something where they anticipate, hey, this should be a quote that you can give me within the day, all the way to fuller solutions where it's, this is a quote that I would expect for it to take you, 3 days, right? Never a week, right? Even though that was a lot of times what was happening. And so we really had to reimagine what the solution looks like, and then re-baseline ourselves and re-educate ourselves to say what the true north was, how the technology needs to work. And that's where the expertise outside in helps us a lot from PW and from Logic, because with the number of experts we have in-house, we have a tendency to look at it one way, right? Especially as you look at our industry. But what we're really always been going for is what does world class look like? And I'll go back to even our purpose at CRH, right, which is our parent company, to reinvent the way our world is built. And so we've constantly through this process looked at reinvention. Things that we thought we would leave as standard and out of the box, we needed to configure, because that was the best thing for our customers and for our employees.
Yeah. That's awesome. It makes perfect sense. It's also really cool to hear how, this transformation kind of had an impact on other areas of the business. I want to double click into one thing that you'd mentioned and that John had brought up around like the unified tech stack. So, you had a lot of configurators. You kind of come down to one. Like, can you just like how do you measure the impact? Is like, are you seeing efficiencies? Are you seeing a faster time to market on offerings? Just like, how has that kind of transformed or impacted your business?
Yeah, look, I think any of us, and one of the things I didn't mention at the beginning is, for us as the executive and the leadership team, this was something that we have led top down through the business because it aligns with our strategy and our growth goals that, our CEO has gone to market to say double-digit year-over-year EBITDA growth. And this has been part of that. We knew we needed to be able to move faster. We knew we needed the right information at the right time for the right people. And so the unified tech stack is so big for us and so transformational. If you let's talk about time to training, significantly reduced. In our before state, right, before we had this, depending upon what location you might sit in, your training was different because the technology that you were using and the manner in which you were using it was different. And so when you think about having a scalable solution for a business that is, national, it was just not going to continue to be feasible to manage and maintain all of these different technologies to have a simple and easily understand commercial operations strategy. So when you couple that process with the training, now standard training that will roll across the board as we continue through this. And so the time to train is significantly reduced, and the complexity of trainings goes down to a single training, regardless of the products or solutions that may be available in the various markets. The other thing I'll say is time to quote reduced by an order of magnitude. And in construction, right, we have these things, what you're going in as an estimator, for example, to do is you've got to look at a site, and there's a lot of information that you've got to get together and go back and forth and do calculations and things of that sort. Prior to the model that we have now, you would spend time with literal sheets of paper and drawings and things, and you got to go find them and download them and print them out. And, you might be working on that and you go away and you come back and you got all these different activities that you work through over the course of, days to weeks, depending upon what you're quoting. Whereas now, all those activities can happen in a single sitting because the standards and what underpins what's happening from our quoting standpoint, our BOMs, our process, our configurations, that part is already defined for you, right? We already know what we have, we know what we make, we know what that is. And so then everything that's reasonable for those, that's already in, and you don't have to go making phone calls, figuring out who has the right information. Which takes me to the third part, which is a single source of facts or truth. This is a significant improvement for us because when you think about changes, right, there are changes that happen based upon market demand. Now we can implement those changes in a unified approach because there is a unified technology stack. We can embed the continuous improvement inside the technology. So now you're able to accurately measure apples to apples, right? It's very difficult to measure effectiveness, to measure different things that are happening across markets when we're using different tools, when some of those tools are connected in different ways. But if we have a single process inside of a single technology, then we can have, whether you call it and-on lights, whatever those things are, to measure where our effectiveness is, where we can improve, and then we can grow with that. And so that's the other part of this, is that now we have a unified technology stack that will grow with us as a business versus it being an anchor that holds us behind from our growth targets and meeting our customer needs in an efficient and productive way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's really good to hear that all the promises I make to potential prospects do come true, at least for Oldcastle.
Yes.
We did get a question while you were answering that question from Russ, Megan, that ties in really well. So I want to go ahead and get that one answered. With that as a reminder, if you do have questions, now's a great time to submit them through the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom window. We will try to get to as many of those questions as we can during this Q&A piece. So Megan, the question we got was, you talked about unifying under a tech stack. With so many different existing products, what did your selection process for your new tech stack look like? You talked to that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a great question. It was, I would say I'm really proud and glad that I work with the team that we're able to have good arguments because it was a robust process on the front end. We looked at multiple technologies, and we knew that what we had was complexity inside of what is, right, our MRP, different CRMs, different configurators, and all of those. We knew we had those. They were all over the place. So from the very beginning, we, as the leadership team, our steering committee consisted of myself, run business performance, which includes commercial excellence and operational excellence. So you can see where that fits. Our CIO, our CFO, and then our COO. And so all of us together, and then we brought in subject matter experts in various markets that understand the customers, but also those that understand manufacturing and the engineering of our products. And so that team, and obviously there's a program manager there, brought in, I believe initially it was 3 or 4 different partnership models and different things that they were looking at. And we kept going through, and we had some critical criteria. One of the main things being that we did not want to sign up for something that would require us to customize everything. We wanted to stay as standard to out of the box as possible, because as we look forward, we know that we have complexity, but as technology improves, as you get updates and things like that, we did not want to go through things where when there was an update for the technology that we had purchased, that then we would have to spend money again to do it because we have so highly customized that software. And that's also where Logic came in, and Pierce Washington as the right partners for us, because knowing Salesforce as the foundation, right, on that side of our business, they have the technology marries very well. And it allows us to only customize what absolutely needs to be customized, while we leave everything else as standard. And so it was don't quote me on this, I know this is recorded, but I want to say it was around 4 to 6 months of a process of us really reviewing the various things, and before we decided on which solution set or which partnership model we were going to go with.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. I think in a second here, we're going to go actually take a look at a live demo and talk a little bit about like at the feature level, but maybe just kind of a closing question. This has been great so far. Probably a lot of folks that, maybe doing this for the first time or getting ready to start a project. You've been through this. It sounds like it's been very successful, but just for you, if you're going to give advice, like what would you do differently, or like what would you tell somebody that's about to start this journey? Like what's the biggest nugget you can pass off to somebody on the call?
I think one of the things that has been a game winner for us is that we took some of the best and brightest out of the business to be a part of this project. And that's a tough decision to make, to take your A player from being directly customer facing or in your manufacturing operations or wherever they are, and put them on a long-term project. And as a leadership team, we made that decision and we did that. And of course, we also made commitments to them, right? Because that's a scary thing to say. I've been, customer facing. Now I'm going to go into this role that will end right after we do this. And what does that look like? So that's been a winner for us. A learning lesson has been the change management. And I think whatever you think the level of change management that you need is, double that and make your efforts at that level. And so we put in a change management team aligned with this. And, we actually ended up bolstering that team to support all of the changes that were coming in, because it's people that we're engaged with. And it's not that folks don't want to change. The example I use is this. My husband and I had moved. We moved houses, right? And so we're still in Atlanta, and we lived one place. We moved 15 miles north of that. I'm coming home from work one day. I'm talking on the phone, hands-free, of course. And I always use my GPS because traffic in Atlanta is crazy. And so I get off at my normal exit, and I see the GPS telling me to keep going straight. And I'm like, what's wrong with this thing? It's malfunctioning. I turn. I'm about to turn on the street where I used to live, and I realize, oh, I don't live here anymore. And it wasn't that I didn't want to change, but muscle memory is really hard to embed. And so when you think about the change management, I think that's probably something we would have even gone deeper and more with in the beginning to continue to move forward. And then the third thing I would say is be flexible. You asked me the question about what we've learned and how we've been agile. We've had to be agile because there are things that we thought we knew and that we thought would work, and they don't. And you got to have a team that is continuously learning, that is vocal, and that is agile enough to say, hey, we were going that way, but let's go a slightly different way, and let's make different decisions because that's the right thing for the business.
Yeah, no, awesome. That's great advice. I really like the piece about bringing in the right folks. I think, the biggest challenges to me in projects are just getting them staffed and making that change in the business. So that's awesome. I think we're gonna just talk a little bit about some of the features of Logic and jump into a demo. If you can go to the next slide, John.
We did have a couple more questions come in
sweet.
that we do have time to answer before we jump over to that. One question, Megan, how did you approach the concept of bringing your A players out of the business in order to prioritize the transformation?
It was complete leadership from the top. And so I told you about the steering committee. What we did was we came together as a senior leadership team and we stacked hands and we said, look, this is the most important thing for our business that we will do this year, or over these couple of years, right? Because it's the driver, it's one of the significant drivers for our continued growth toward our targets and goals. And also it's better for our employees. They're going to have a better work experience, right? So better for everyone all around. And so what we knew is that if you work at a plant in Texas, if Megan or the COO or the CFO says, hey, this is a really great opportunity, you should take it, you do not care because you don't know me, right? You know a title. Who you do know is that director of operations or that president or whomever that is that you report to. And so we took the process of saying, here's the roles that we're going to post. Here's the competencies and skill sets behind those. Here are, because we go through and we do calibration and we look at talent and everything like that. Here are people that are looking to grow, maybe looking to do something else. They would be great for this role. It's going to be different than what they thought about. And the leaders went and spoke to them specifically. Now, we, of course, did go through the proper HR process, right? People had to apply for roles and we would go through that. But in some of the cases, what we needed was very specialized. So there were only a few people that could have fit the bill for those roles. And that's what we did. It was leadership, stacking hands, going through the chains, knowing, who people trusted and having that trust to say, hey, I think this would be a great role for you. Here's what it would look like. It's going to be really tough. We didn't lie to anyone. We're like, hey, this is tough. This type of change is tough. Embedding the technology, the new processes. Even some of the people that you work with today, they're going to be really mad at you because you're moving their cheese. But we think it'll be good for you, and that's how we did it. It wasn't just emails that we sent out. It was conversations. It showed up in town halls, both on the national and local levels, where all of the leaders were talking about it and talking about how great it was. And so we made the roles, we said what they were, but we placed them at a level with the appropriate compensation and perks to walk the talk, to say, hey, we're saying this, but also everything behind this role shows you how critical and important this is. I hope that answers your question.
I believe you knocked that one right out of the park. Another question we had was around your tech stack. So obviously Logic was a piece of that. You mentioned Salesforce. Can you speak about kind of what other pieces were part of your tech stack and how that impacted the decision to go with Logic? Yeah,
our tech stack now is simple. SAP, Salesforce, Logic. There's some bolt-ons to SAP, of course, right, which is normal. That's it. And so that was part of the entire process for us, is we have to make this easy. We cannot have technology be the thing that is disabling us from moving forward. And so I'm sure everyone listening is familiar. Everybody knows SAP. Everybody knows Salesforce. But we looked on both sides, on the operations side, MRP side, and on the CRM side. We looked at multiple technologies and almost went through a process of saying, okay, let's talk ourselves out of what maybe looks like the obvious solution. But for us, with our complex configurators, with the network that we have, with the diversity of markets and expertise, this is the right thing for us.
Great. And then one last question as of now, in case any come in over the next question's answer. Can you speak a little bit about the implementation? So obviously combining a lot of existing products into one new tech stack can be a challenge. So how did your organization work on rolling that out for your team?
It's hard, right? And so, and let me be clear, right? We're not done. We are in process. So what we did was, or what we're doing is the team I spoke about, right? That's the team that has been working on, the configuration, the execution of it, the design, the processes, the material and data management, all of those different things that go behind that, training of the teams, user acceptance testing, all of those things that are part of a technology project like this. So that team exists. And then as we roll into the different launches, we broke, I can't give away too much here, but we broke it down in a way that was bite sizes of the organization. So not trying to do all of it at once, because we're a very large business, but taking bite sizes and then creating teams around each implementation. And so based upon what that, let's say, market may look like in terms of what their operation capabilities are, and then what their customer base and sizing and products and complexity look like, you have a team that is there with them that includes change managers, trainers, subject matter experts, and then bringing in folks from previous implementations that have the experience. So you kind of do almost a leapfrog thing. So as we learn lessons with each implementation, those follow and help us to continuously improve the implementation process. So that team that we put together, they move from design build mode into implementation execution mode. Now, of course, those are different capabilities for some people. Not all people can do both of those, but we make those decisions, and we kind of take 6 to 8 months in advance as we look at the schedule to say, okay, we're going to need to maybe roll these people off and then roll different individuals on based upon the capabilities. So that's what the implementation looks like for us.
Great. Oh, we got another one right at the buzzer here. Okay. How do you think having an innovative technology like Logic has helped your employee satisfaction?
Oh man, if you think about if I think about our employees, myself included, most people know the things that they're good at and the things that they like to do. With our previous technology stack, if let's say there's 10 things that I do on a regular basis, and I like 3 of them and am good at those 3, that means there's 7 things that I do on a regular basis that I'm not interested in, I don't care about, and I'm not good at. With this, and a lot of those things are the things that, I got to go print this out, I've got to go download this, I got to go find these drawings, I got to go call this person to get this information, and I know they're going to be busy, and like those things where it's like, I just need a piece of information, right? And so having this innovative technology takes the things that are better done by technology and puts them, automates them inside the technology. And now we take the value that the actual human is bringing, which is thinking about this, talking to the customer, understanding the customer needs, and then translating that into the solution that we are specialized in providing. And that is huge for customer success, but it's huge for the morale of our employees, because now they get back to the things they love to do, which is spending more time in front of the customers. That was the number one thing that we hear from our commercial team. And they were continuing to get bogged down in things that weren't spending time with their customers. And so it's been huge for that. It will continue to be huge for that. And it gets people back to doing the things that they came to the business to do in the first place.
Great. All right, that is all the questions we have gotten at the moment. We are I hand it over to John or Russ, one of the two of you. And then hopefully we will have another couple of minutes for last questions at the very end. So make use of that Q&A box throughout the next little bit here. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Courtney. I'll just go to the next one, John. I'll keep it to one slide for the folks on the webinar, and then we're going to do a live demo here. So just to kind of highlight, Logic for the manufacturing space. I think we heard it from Megan, the employee feedback, satisfaction. Like one of the key reasons for that is our focus on performance and scale. And so regardless if you're an end user, an internal seller, a partner, we provide what we call really a video game-like experience. As you're making selections on the screen, we're, dynamically running the rules in the background. The response is instantaneous. it looks and feels like you're interacting with a video game. And so we'll see that in a minute here when John goes through the demo. One of the other big things is that, we have what we call a solving engine, which allows us to get to that performance and scale. But really what it means is, typically in large configuration or large product deployments, you potentially have thousands of rules, potentially millions of data points on how things are put together. We optimize the way that the rules engine, evaluates each time the user interacts with it. And so what it ends up being is, there's really consumerized selling experience. The way that I would equate it to is like if you went to Amazon and you were going to configure a civilian energy turbine, like that's the kind of experience that you're going to expect with Amazon. Sorry, with Logic. We built the application from the ground up as a composable service with a headless architecture. And really what that means is, if you have a Salesforce, you've got an existing system, we have pre-built integrations that let you run us as an iframe or directly in those systems. But if you want to deploy us in a self-service channel or just, somewhere that's kind of bespoke to your organization, we have a full API and everything you would need to effectively deploy that headless model. And then really at the end of the day, like, again, going back to the consumerized selling experience, we do a really good job of separating, what the sales rep or what the end buyer wants to see and all of the details that are required and important for the manufacturing process. And so we call it the sales BOM and the manufacturing BOM. Sales BOM, maybe it's 10, 50, 100 line items. Manufacturing BOM could be 10, 10,000, 15,000 with routing, et cetera. We make that available to downstream systems, but we abstract it away so that, you can really focus on what you're selling and not everything you need to do to make it. And so with that, I'm going to actually turn over to John, who will actually take a look at Logic, and I think what's going to be a really cool demo.
All right. Thanks, Megan, and thanks, Russ, for that overview. And yeah, let's jump right in. So, what we're going to see in the demonstration, apologies, let me go to the next slide here. What we're going to see in the demonstration is, really that use case of visual commerce. So looking at how inside your direct selling motion for your sales reps who are on the phone or working with your customers directly, how we can start to structure that opportunity, that deal with Logic.io, providing that detailed visuals as well as the bill of materials for that specific product. So we'll go through, an opportunity management, looking at a quote that's already been closed, and really looking at the details that Logic can provide there, not only from that bill of materials standpoint, but also from the CAD model that's embedded in Logic, where we can download PDFs or any of the 3D file formats to really get those submittal drawings automatically generated out of the configurator. Second, we're going to then look at how we can really streamline that overall customer journey by enabling self-service for those dealers or those contractors by putting, this same Logic configuration engine on a B2B self-service portal. And this is really where, Russ talked a lot about the self-learning that's really, really happening in the market, and that disruption where your customers, your contractors, your partners are all, asking ChatGPT. They're going on the websites and they're looking for that information even before they reach out to a sales rep to contract. And so it's learning what options are available, what are the actual pricing and the availability of all of these product options. So we'll see how that self-service experience can be enabled with Logic.io, enabled through that self-service portal. And then finally, we're just going to look at, when we talk about omni-channel, we're talking about a unified process, kind of that single way of buying from our company. And so, that'll not only applies to the products that we're buying and the pricing that they're going to be priced at, but also how are those products delivered? How am I getting status updates on when this item is going to get delivered, or, any notifications if something changes along the way? All of those are part of the overall buying experience and part of the offering that we can really look at as we start to drive these self-service experiences. So with that, I'm going to jump over into our direct sales motion here, where we're inside Salesforce, and I've got a very simple product here, opportunity for about 5 pumps that we're going to be selling. This was a deal that was closed previously, but we're going to jump in and start to look at what that overall quote was comprised of and how Logic.io surfaced that information. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into my quote. And here we can start to see that overall deal that was structured by Logic and starting to see, the 5 pumps that have been configured and the price point and even the discounts that were applied to win that deal. If I jump right into that configuration of that pump, we'll pull up Logic.io and really start to surface all the details of that configuration. So we can start to look at, this was an orange. We know that this was for my 270 inlet. And so it's really just to showcase some of the fast video game-like experience. You can start to see some of that start to change and re-render based on the selections. And that's really where, as a sales rep, I can really help my customer guide through the process and start to ask them, what are the specific informations around how we're selling this pump? If we wanted to get into kind of that needs understanding, like Russ talked about with his lawnmower, right? We might want to look at, what fluids we're actually pumping through this pump. Is it water? Is it, these other chemicals that we might have? And that might start to drive different densities, viscosity, different ways that the pump will actually operate. And so as we can see, there's certain constraints that will be governed here to really make sure that we're offering a technically and commercially viable product as we're selling this pump to our end customer. So I'll flip that back. We'll stick with our orange here and really understand that in our overall bill of materials here, that we're going to go ahead and sell this specific pump that we're looking at. Now, as Russ also talked about, Logic can really structure multiple bill of materials here. And so what we're looking at is the information that would go out on the output document that would be communicated to the customer. But if we wanted other detailed information, we can start to blow that out into our manufacturing bill of material, which is going to give us all of the details down to the nuts and bolts so that when we pass this down to SAP, when the production team actually picks this up, we can know exactly all the items that we need to provision to go into this. We can even start to get down as low level as that routing information to determine, maybe what machine will be manufacturing this pump and at what time. So all of this information is very typical to be in that manufacturing bill of material. And again, is that rich content that can be used to drive those downstream systems and processes. On top of all this rich information that we're starting to structure with the bill of materials and the overall configuration, with our 3D CAD interface here, we can start to really see and believe and look at this before we buy. But also, it brings that rich context in so that as we're starting to think about what our engineers are doing to actually produce documents and renderings of that 3D so we can hand that to the contractor, maybe they need to know exactly how wide this is or take this model and put it into their design elements. This is where automatically integrated right into Logic, we can download PDFs, we can download many different file types of this 3D model and start to now extract that, provide that value to our customers or to our partners so that this overall journey of buying this product from a customer perspective is seamless and automated. Again, taking processes that might take, a week or longer to actually draw that document all the way down to minutes or seconds to be able to render that based on the custom configuration that we've just put together here. So a lot of power in what we're seeing in the visual commerce perspective here for our customers. And this is overall making this a very easy video game-like experience and really adding a lot of value in terms of time to quote and really user experience to our sales reps and to that end customer. Next, what we're going to look at just quickly here is this same process now in that self-service portal. So here we have a B2B commerce portal where we're starting to look at how we can start to expose that same configuration process and also provide the details and overall education of, around this product. And so here on my e-commerce storefront, I can see some basic information like my overview, description of the product, maybe some also relative products that customers are purchasing. But I can also start to drill into what are the technical drawings, looking at the specifications here, maybe the performance curves or any further documentation that I might need to drill into as we're starting to understand the specifications around this pump. Now, with Logic.io, we can start to really bring that self-learning even further and start to even bring that configuration forward so we can add this to the cart and check out in a self-service manner. And that can all be done by starting to expose Logic.io here inside this e-commerce envision. So, the same configuration, that unified revenue engine provided by Logic, is both able to be exposed not only through the direct sales motion on the quoting process, but also in B2B storefronts or even on your customer-facing website to be able to drive that similar experience where we drive, that self-service capability of learning what are the different options. I can buy this in the exact color that matches my brand if I wanted red or green, and then being able to automatically generate that PDF directly from that self-service portal so I can take that home, understand what that is, present that to my team and really, or to my customer, and work with them on that purchasing process. So this overall, unification between the different channels that we sell through really makes that an easy process, when we look at surfacing this through Logic.io. The last point I'll point out here is, really being able to see all of those different orders and how we can see it really through that e-commerce experience starts to bring up what are those configurable orders that I've already ordered. So I can go back and look at all my order histories. I can start to punch into what is that exact order that I'm starting to build for that pump that I'm ordering. And with a simple click, I can add that right back to my cart if that's something that I know I want to replace or order again for another customer. This makes that buying process really simple, as again, we're starting to configure a unified process no matter where we're buying from this company. And I can go ahead and easily initiate reorders that make this a really seamless self-service process for the end customer. All of these different channels and what we're looking at is at Pierce Washington is really how we tie this to what we call our total commerce framework. This is kind of our North Star that we've helped Oldcastle and many other manufacturers with understanding how to deploy these overall unified processes. And this is where, through work with Salesforce and Logic and SAP, we've started to really come up with our standard framework and accelerator for how we take customers like Oldcastle and other manufacturers to market with that unified omni-channel vision. So certainly reach out to Pierce Washington to look at more information here around Salesforce, around Logic. And if there's any other questions, Courtney, I think that's all I had. I'll pass it.
We did get a couple more we have time to answer. Megan, have you found improvement with time to market for new products, collecting requirements and standardizing that process through your change of your tech stack?
So we have not, that I can recall, right? This is one of those where the team would give you a better answer on that time to market, but I don't think we've released any new products inside of the solution at this point in time. But what we have seen, right, when you look at the collecting requirements, and John just went through it, if you look at that configuration, right, the configurator is built in a way to guide you, right, on what the customers need, what information is required. And so if you think about, especially in our industry, right, there's an inflection point, and I think in a lot of industries, right, as we see the workforce turning, it's not necessary. You're not always necessarily dealing with someone that automatically knows if I'm ordering this particular product, I need these 7 points of information. All they know is, oh, my boss told me that I need to go get this, and I need to go get it from Oldcastle or, Oldcastle's competitor, right? Which is, of course, not going to be as great quality, but, you got to get multiple prices. I get it. So they may not necessarily know. They're just calling and saying, I need this thing. And so now in the before world, you've got someone on our side that, again, may also be earlier in their experience. And so they're just going back and forth, phone calls, text messages, emails, going back. I don't know what to ask you. Oh, okay, I've got this. And now manufacturing says, well, I need these other pieces. Okay, now that no longer exists, because now on our side, I have a template in front of me that tells me, hey, thanks for calling. Really appreciate it. Do you have these 7 pieces of information? Okay, fine. Hey, get these 7. Here's some insight on where you might get those from or how I can help you, and then come back with those. So when you talk about collecting requirements, it's order of magnitude in terms of the ease of that. And again, that's also impacts our ability to train on, because what we do is in a different world. Everybody out there doesn't know about, how do you design a manhole? I didn't know how to design a manhole, right? I didn't realize how much stuff was under the ground in that manhole that I walk over, or that, my car bumps over in my neighborhood. And so, and then standardization, absolutely. Standardization of how we deliver solutions. And so it gives us more visibility into, I'll say it this way, what solutions look like, right? So it's almost, if you think of it in the sneaker world, I'm a sneakerhead. Okay, if I'm going to buy the new Jordans, I also might want 2 or 3 pairs of these laces, because these are the ones that change the look a little bit. And hey, why not? I'll get some socks as well, right? And so those things are all going to be available to you right there. And so being able to standardize the presentation or even the discussion around the solutions. Hey, I know you say you need this product. At that site, are you also doing XYZ? Here's some things that we can also offer you.
Great, thank you. And then you spoke to this a little bit earlier, but a more specific question around what are some of the KPIs or metrics that you all were tracking for the transformation initiatives internally?
Yeah, I mean, the first one, right, is how many technologies, how many swivel chair motions does our employee have to take in order to do their job? So that's one, right? And then when you think from a commercial standpoint, time to quote is a big one. Then in time to quote, and then the value of the quotes, right? I mean, we're a business. We want to quote you more stuff. And I think probably everybody on this phone is like, yes, we want to quote you more stuff, because if we quote you more stuff, we can win more things. But we also fundamentally believe that the solutions we provide in the market, no one can compare with, but they don't always know that. So the value, our average quote and average sales volume is also something that we look at. I think you asked what those values are. And given that I don't know who's on the other side of this call, I would feel free to reach out to me. Happy to talk through some of those. But I will say the numbers are transformational. So with a technology project like this, right, you want to look, one of the things you always look at is effectiveness of all of your associates and employees. And that's something that significantly increases as we continue to roll out in the implementation.
Great. Thank you. That is all the questions we have gotten. So like Megan mentioned, if you have any others that maybe you didn't want to ask on the call here, you can be more than welcome to reach out to PW or Logic, and we can route and connect you with Megan. That is all we have time for today. So I want to take a moment and thank everyone for spending the last hour with us, listening to Oldcastle's story, staying tuned in for a demo, hearing from Russ. I also want to take a moment to thank all 3 of our presenters for your time in putting this together as well. And like I mentioned, we'll be following up with attendees with the recording, so you can contact us with additional questions that way.